I mean, can you believe that you draw a straight line from the war with Iran to what Polly in Peoria is paying for a mortgage? I mean, that's just how it works.
That is how it works, it seems. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Dasugian. So today on the show, if you're out there and you're wondering, I want to buy a house, but everything just feels so expensive. Well, you're not wrong, but it is a buyer's market, although mortgage rates are the highest they have been in more than a year. There's a lot of inventory, but high mortgage rates. So we're going to have Christine Romans on the show. She is chief business correspondent here at NBC News. And she's walking us through, really, quite frankly, how to deal with that. Then there's a phrase you may have heard or may not. It's called MAID, and it stands for Medical Aid in Dying. New York just enacted a law for medical aid in dying, which takes effect. And we are talking with someone who works with patients going through just that. And he gives us his response to critics of this new law. Up first, though, so progressives scored some major victories in Tuesday's Democratic primaries, especially in Michigan. Abdul El-Sayed, he squeaked out this win over Representative Haley Stevens for the open Senate seat, and progressive candidates won their primaries in 2 House races. So what does this progressive swing mean for November, especially when it comes to the very purple Michigan? For this, I want to bring in NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster, who is joining us from Michigan. Hey, Shaq.
How are you? It was a long night, but it was a good day.
A lot of late night decisions as well. Abdul El-Sayed's decision coming in especially late, clinching the Democratic Senate nomination over Representative Haley Stevens. Even though, by the way, Stevens got $65 million in outside donations and a lot of support from the, Democratic establishment. And I'm talking about, for instance, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Here is what El-Sayed said about it today.
You're not supposed to be able to beat $70 million of outside spending. A record amount of money spent in a campaign against a Democrat in a primary in any campaign. You're not supposed to be able to beat that. And what we showed is that the power of our many is greater than the power of their money.
Shaq, how do you do it?
When you talk to his campaign, at least, they say that they had the energy and enthusiasm. I mean, their whole theory of the case is that they're bringing in new voters here. And we believe we did see record turnout for a primary Senate election on the Democratic side. You heard him celebrating that, the party chair celebrating that earlier today. And they also believe that they were able to get their message out a little bit more aggressively than Haley Stevens, which is almost shocking to say because of the money that you mentioned that was on her side. Yeah. The spending advantage, when you just turn on the TV here in Michigan, it was clear that she had the advantage in the television ad wars, but he was able to kind of hit those untraditional media platforms, the podcasts. He was getting a lot of attention, going to college campuses, kind of really going all across the state of Michigan. And his campaign believes that outreach that they say they started early on was really what paid off for them.
But El-Sayed was not the only progressive candidate, Shaq, that won in Michigan. In the House races, you have progressive challenger State Representative Donovan McKinney beating incumbent Congressman Sri Thanadar. You had Bernie Sanders endorsed Will Lawrence, winning a 3-way primary, beating Bridget Brink and Matt Masdem. But progressives did not sweep all their races in last night's primaries. In Missouri, Representative Wesley Bell defeated former Representative Cori Bush in a Democratic primary rematch in a House race in St. Louis. So what is kind of like the overall picture right now when it comes to the progressive left and the wind at their sails that we have been seeing in some of these races?
Yeah, it was definitely a mixed bag last night for those progressive candidates. I think it's all about trajectory here, right? These are candidates who, in the past, if you looked maybe 10 years ago and had a candidate with these kind of positions, Medicare for all, abolishing ICE, very critical toward U.S. military aid that goes to Israel, these are not candidates that would have had a chance at really having this kind of success, especially in states like Michigan. But you're seeing more and more of them being able to succeed and win in these primaries. So even though it wasn't a complete sweep for progressives, when I was at the El-Sayed event last night, there were a lot of people who were excited because they're feeling that the positions that many of them have had for years and years are finally getting mainstream attention and mainstream votes, and they feel like they're on the trajectory that they want to be in the long run.
So let's talk about November, right, and the general election. You have that open Michigan Senate seat. It's a near must win for Democrats if they want to win back control of the Senate. Republicans wanted actually El-Sayed to be the Democratic nominee. They think he's going to be easier for the Republican nominee, Mike Rogers, to actually beat. They're calling him a quote unquote El-Sayed, that is, communist. That is how Rogers and President Trump, who endorsed Mike Rogers, is positioning El-Sayed. This is, as I mentioned, a purple state. It swung for Trump in 2016, then Biden for 2020, and then Trump again in 2024. So what could we expect come November?
I think we're looking at an expensive fight. I think we're looking at a race that will get very nasty, that will get very dirty, frankly. I mean, saw El-Sayed the day before the primary, and I got some questions, one-on-one interview with him briefly. And one of the questions I had for him was, what evidence do you have? And what would you say to someone who's skeptical that a candidate as progressive as you could win in a state as purple as Michigan?
Yeah.
And his whole framing of it was that we're thinking about red and blue and purple and Michigan being a purple state incorrectly.
If everybody was so moderate, why would the state elect Donald Trump twice? I got an alternative hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is that people are so sick and tired of establishments on both sides of the aisle that are bought off by the corporations who are nickel and diming them at every turn, that they were willing to hold their nose and vote for Donald Trump twice.
His point is that because he's anti-establishment, because he doesn't take corporate PAC money, because he pushes for ideas that he believes people want to hear and people believe will make an impact and have an impact on their lives, that he will have success here. This will be the ultimate test of that, Yasmin,
So
in a
kitchen
state
table
that
issues.
is a battleground. Exactly. That's a battleground race where a lot of money's going to be poured into.
Is there a sense that the Democratic establishment will get behind El-Sayed now? I mean, I know it did take Governor Gretchen Whitmer up until the end of July to endorse Haley Stevens. So could she now endorse El-Sayed and going into the general, or does her endorsement even matter at this point?
Among the elected leaders and the party leaders, there's a clear sense that they will get behind El-Sayed. It might take some a little bit longer, but you saw Haley Stevens, for example, release a statement saying that she's willing to roll up her sleeves and work for El-Sayed, fight for him because of the threat that she believes that Mike Rogers poses if he does win the Senate. And of course, the bigger picture, you laid the stakes out that if Democrats lose this seat, this is a Democrat-held seat, and if they lose this one, that really makes it incredibly difficult for them to have any hope of flipping the Senate.
Shaquille Brewster, enjoy Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great talking to you.
So there is a new law that takes effect today in New York State. And it allows terminally ill patients to end their lives with medical assistance. Under this law, New York residents are eligible if they've been diagnosed with a terminal illness and their doctor says they have less than 6 months to live. This is part of a practice known as medical aid in dying, and New York is now the 12th state to legalize it. So how are patients going to get this care? And why are some critics concerned about it? So for this, I want to bring in David Atkins. He is the co-founder of Quimaetus, a service that will be working with these end-of-life patients. David, thanks for being here.
Yeah, pleasure.
So you are a licensed clinical social worker, and you and your co-founder, Daniel Kogan, met doing hospice care.
Mm-hmm.
How did your work in doing hospice care influence your decision to create Quimaetus?
So I've been a hospice social worker for 13 or 14 years. And throughout the years, I worked with many different patients from many different backgrounds. And there were some folks, who came, especially to our inpatient unit, they came there in pain. And I found we could usually manage their pain and manage their symptoms with the tools we had at hand. But there are some people who I think were really struggling with this kind of existential distress at end of life and this angst and this feeling of us having lost all autonomy in their lives. And we had folks over the years who are literally begging us to hasten their deaths.
Wow.
In many different situations and many different backgrounds, who just found that they wanted the dying process accelerated. And until now, we just couldn't do that. So I think that experience over the years really inspired us to found Quimaetus.
I know that you've already started receiving referrals from hospices and advocacy groups. How does it work? What is the first step when you are connected with a patient? Because this New York law requires a terminal illness in which the patient would have 6 months or less to live. So what is the process for your organization in deciding as to whether or not a patient meets those requirements and how you walk them through it?
So part of my role is to reach out to the patient or sometimes to the family and just, gather as much information as possible. And for people who do want to move forward with the next steps, then our nurse practitioner, Daniel Kogan, he does more of the clinical deep dive. So he will go see the patient in their homes, gather all the medical records, and really do a full assessment of the patient in their particular situation to try to see if they would be a candidate. And people who are likely candidates for this or who want to continue exploring this option, if Daniel feels that they are an eligible candidate, we would involve our doctors. So we have a team of 4 physicians and 3 psychologists. And then after that, step by step, we follow what the law really dictates. So the attending physician will see them in their home. The consulting physician will see the patient independently and verify that they are terminally ill and they meet the criteria. A psychologist from our network will see the patient and verify that they have capacity and that they have not been unduly coerced by anyone else. So there are many steps in this process, including a written attestation, but we help them with all of that from the very beginning until the very day, whether or not they choose to take the medications, but we are there until the end.
What about family members? Like, how do you manage the family around this particular patient, maybe that doesn't want them to take this route?
So that's a really big component. I have a background as a hospice social worker. So a large part of my role is, family dynamics. And, I do a psychosocial assessment at the beginning of every encounter. So I will talk to different family members and see how they feel about their loved one's decision. And there will be family members who do not agree. So I think part of our role is to have a conversation. We sit down, we talk about that. How do different people feel? Explore those feelings, and then see how we can proceed.
There are potentially financial barriers in taking this route here in New York State. I know, for instance, with Quiェtus, you don't take insurance, right? So people would have to pay out of pocket. So if you were to get a terminal diagnosis and you don't have the money to pay, then what?
So there's a restriction against the use of federal dollars to cover medical aid in dying. So our approach is for every patient, we will have a conversation with them. If they come to us and they say they cannot afford our services, we will have a conversation. What can they afford? We had a lady call us yesterday. Her husband is very, very sick, seems otherwise appropriate, but they have no money at all. So in certain cases, we are able to help people without a fee. But it's really a case-by-case basis. We have to have that conversation. We have to talk to them. All of our clinicians, they work hard and they deserve to be compensated. But at the end of the day, we are committed to access to those who are eligible. And we do not want finances to be a barrier for anyone from receiving this, if appropriate.
My father had colon cancer a long time ago when I was in the 6th grade. And at the time, he was given 6 months to live. He went on to survive 25 more years. And there are those that would argue, some physicians, in fact, my dad, in fact, was a physician as well, that patients may make this decision hastily because they are given some sort of terminal diagnosis, but then outlast that terminal diagnosis, as my dad did way back when. So what is your response to that?
So, it's similar to when a doctor certifies a patient for hospice care. Hospice care requires 2 independent physicians to certify that the patient has less than 6 months to live if the disease follows its normal progression. So it's the same thing. We don't have a crystal ball. Like no physician in the world has a crystal ball that can accurately predict prognosis. But there is evidence that we can gather, and we can interview the patient, interview their providers, and make our best guess at their prognosis. And that's all we can do. But again, we would want to gather that evidence first and talk to multiple providers that have seen the patient, that know the patient, and then really, make a careful exploration of all the available evidence before making that kind of decision.
David Atkins, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
And we are back with Here's the Scoop from NBC News. So we have been talking a lot about affordability. And one of the biggest expenses people have is housing. So buying a house is a major American dream goal, but that is getting a lot more expensive. The average interest rate on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage is up to 6.83%, the highest in more than a year. But what does that actually mean for real lives? For this, I want to bring in NBC News chief business correspondent, Christine Romans. Hey, Romans.
Hi, Yasmin.
So what's driving these rates, the highest in over a year?
I mean, can you believe that you draw a straight line from the war with Iran to what Polly in Peoria is paying for a mortgage? I mean, that's just how it works. The war with Iran has raised oil prices, energy prices, which has raised concerns about inflation, which has raised overall interest rates, and those interest rates are what are tied to mortgage rates. So mortgage rates the highest in a year.
Wow.
Watching that there. It wasn't long ago I saw mortgage rates dip to 5.99% just before the war with Iran began, and there were hopes for a spring thaw in the housing market, and now that has reversed.
So you are tackling this issue on your new show, Current, which is on NBC News Now, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you for the plug. Thank you for the plug.
But this is kind of playing out differently depending on the city that you're in,
Exactly.
right? And you guys focused on Miami and Nashville.
Yeah.
Right? So how are they different in those places?
So for so long now, people have not been selling their homes because they're locked into an ultra low mortgage rate.
Yeah.
And they just were putting off life changes, putting off city to city or state to state moves because they just couldn't bear the thought of getting rid of that cheap mortgage and having to re-enter the housing market at a higher mortgage rate someplace. But things have changed. Time has passed. People can't put off these moves forever. And you're seeing sellers start to pop up in some of these markets. Miami, Nashville, several cities in Texas, places that were boom towns during COVID.
Yeah.
Now suddenly sellers are popping up, and it's become a buyer's market in some of these places. Nashville, for example, Redfin finds there are 2 sellers for every buyer in Nashville.
Wow.
So that means that buyers finally are getting some choices. Remember, the story had been buyers are shut out, buyers are bidding
Especially
way over asking.
Around COVID, there just wasn't anything to buy anymore because everyone was taking everything.
So while the overall housing market is still not normal, it is not acting healthily, but inside real estate, we can see some of these markets that are showing some momentum for buyers. Nashville is one of them. And something interesting happening in Nashville, they're building new homes. They have the space and the tracks to build new homes, and those builders are offering lower than market mortgage rates for buyers, offering to help pay with closing costs in some cases. So buyers have some leverage and some options in Nashville that we're not seeing in other cities.
So you should basically be, if I'm hearing you correctly, like maybe you should just be making more deals because buyers are more on the side of winning right now. Like
buyers in some places
is more on their side.
Yeah, and nationwide there are 48.5, according to Redfin, I think 48.5% more sellers than buyers right now. So it is a buyer's market nationwide, and that's kind of a new turning point. And the other thing about the sellers is that in some cases sellers are very upset about the idea that they might have to go get a higher mortgage rate. Maybe they have a mortgage rate at 3%. But their home price appreciation is unbelievably good. They're sitting on a lot of money in their homes. So if it's time to take a new job cross country, if it's time to go live closer to your kids, there are incentives for sellers to say, okay, I sat still long enough, I'm going to sell.
So you're doing a lot of things like this on the Romans Report.
Yeah.
For the Romans Report, I should say, on your new show, Current, on NBC News Now. What else should we be watching for, aside from the beautiful Christine Romans?
Thank you.
And all that you have to offer.
Well, the philosophy and the framing of the show is really no jargon, no talking over anybody's heads. I want to really take what's happening in the halls of power on Wall Street and Washington and connect it, every story connect to the kitchen table. And we have a franchise called 50 States in 50 Days. It's so lovely. The premise is that amid the frustration and chaos at a national level, change and progress happens in your local community. Today we profiled a woman in Alabama who lives in a town where there are a lot of dirt roads, and when it rains, it is hellish. And she decided, I'm just not going to wait in line. You know, there's some long line of whose road gets paved next. She and her neighbors got together. They started raising money, and they paved that darn road. And it's just amazing. I mean, it sounds so simple, but they wanted to figure out how to fix it. And then that is something everybody else in the state is looking to. Like, wait a minute, you know, if our county can't do it, if our state can't do it, how do we make them see what we need?
How do we empower ourselves in a way? Christine Romans, congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you. That is going to do it for us at Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you saw and you heard, press the subscribe button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.